In this video, we're going to be going over the different ways to cut different types of fruit. There's a few rules that we need to go over to begin with. The first is that you always want to wash your fruits before you cut them. Secondly, use the sharpest knife that you can find. Third, you want to refrigerate them as quickly as possible after you cut, and always use a clean cutting board to minimize your risk of injury. The more juices that are on your cutting board, the more likely it is that your knife will slip when you're cutting. This is going to be more likely that you will injure yourself. You also want to keep your cutting board very clean so that your knife doesn't slide into other items that are on the cutting board, and that will cause it to slip as well. This will minimize your likelihood of injury throughout the whole process. The first fruit that we are going to go over is how to cut a pineapple. Many people struggle with how to cut this particular fruit. The first step is that you're going to cut the top and the bottom of the pineapple off. This is going to give you a stable surface for your remaining steps. Notice that the knife goes through this very easily. That's because the knife is sharp to start out with. And then you set it on that end. You're going to shave off a thin peel, rotating around as you go. Remove all of the brown parts of the pineapple that you possibly can. After you've gone around the first time, you're going to go around again, ensuring that you've taken off as many of the little brown spots as you possibly can. These are very tough and affect the end product. Then you're going to take note of where the core is. As you can see, there's a little white circle in the center of the pineapple. Anything inside of that white circle is going to be very tough, so you're going to be cutting around that core in the next step. So you're going to cut slices off of the side. Generally, it's easier to cut one big slice off of each side, and then you're going to cut smaller slices off of the other two sides. After that, you're going to discard your core. You can use a paring knife to get more of it off, or just eat directly off of the core to eliminate some of the waste. Then you're going to cut your slices into strips, and then cut those strips into chunks. You want these pieces to be as bite-sized as possible, and consider if you have smaller children in the house that you want to make those slices small enough for them to consume. Next, we're going to be cutting a mango. Mangoes are a little bit of a different fruit than you may be used to. To begin, you want to make sure that the fruit is ripe. That means that the fruit was going to give a little bit when it's pressed. Then you want to wash it and dry it thoroughly so that the peeler doesn't slip as you're peeling it. The fruit is going to be very slimy once you peel it, so it's going to be very easy to drop. So don't peel over top of a trash can because you're going to be very likely to drop it into the garbage. I like to peel over top of a bowl, or if I don't want to wash a bowl, you can use an old grocery bag, and that way it can be removed from the cutting board very easily. You can peel with a peeler or a paring knife. A peeler is a lot easier way to peel though, because it's going to remove less of the fruit than a paring knife is going to remove. You can use a paring knife though if the peeler starts to become a little bit hard to use. After you peel, you're going to cut off any brown spots on the fruit. You want to keep on taking off those brown spots until there's none of it remaining. The pit of the mango is shaped just like the fruit itself, only smaller. It doesn't remove as easily from the fruit as a peach does, so you're going to have to cut around it as you cut your fruit. You're going to cut your slices off the flatter sides. Then you're going to trim the fruit off the pit on the other sides. Then use a paring knife to remove as much of the fruit as you can off of the pit. It's going to be very easy to tell where the pit is into the fruit. Cut your slices into strips and trim your strips into chunks. Make them the size that you need for whatever application that you're using. After that, you're going to use a bench scraper to lift your fruit into a bowl, not the side of your knife. You'll oftentimes see chefs use the side of a knife to scoop things with, but you're very likely to cut the side of your hand if you do that. So use a bench scraper to remove any of your chunks into your bowl. If you'll be cutting more fruit, wipe your board down with a paper towel if it gets a lot of juice on it. This is going to reduce your risk of injury over time. The cleaner you keep your board, the less likely to get injured you are. The next type of fruit we're going to be cutting is peaches. We're going to be showing two different ways of peeling peaches. Your first method is going to be very similar to other ways of peeling that you've seen. It's just going to be to use a peeler. You can peel with a peeler or a paring knife. I generally peel a little ring around the top and then peel down to the bottom. The other method is going to be very similar to a way that you might have seen tomatoes be peeled before, but it works for peaches as well. You begin by cutting an X in the bottom of each of your peaches. This method is going to work really well if you're going to be freezing them or canning them, so if you have a whole lot to peel, this is a very easy way to do that quickly. You're going to plunge those into boiling water for 30 seconds. This loosens the pectins under the skin, so the skins are going to separate a lot easier. But we want to stop that cooking process by plunging them into ice water and then you are going to pull them out. That X is going to allow the skins to release a little bit easier, and they should come off very, very easily with just your fingers. This is also a way to save a lot of your fruit because even with a peeler, you're going to be removing a whole lot of the skin. And so this particular method lets you remove a lot less of the fruit than other methods. Rotate a paring knife around the fruit, being careful to avoid your hand with the knife. You will feel the pit in the middle as you rotate your knife around. Then you're going to separate the two halves with your thumb and pop the pit out of the middle. Cut into wedges or chunks based on what your recipe needs. This process is going to be very similar to what any of your other fruits are. Cut into strips and then cut into chunks. The next fruit we're going to cut is going to be kiwis. Wash your fruit and then cut each end off. This is going to give you an even surface to start from. Using a paring knife or a peeler, peel the thin skin off of the fruit. Remove all of the brown fuzzy skin from the kiwi. Removing each of the ends is going to make this process a lot easier. We're going to be showing 3 different ways of cutting kiwi. The first way is to just cut rounds. For this method, you're literally just going to be carefully cutting into slices. When you get to the end, you may need to slice horizontally to prevent yourself from getting injured. Also, the part next to the stem tends to be a little tough, so you may just need to trim from around the stem once you get close to the end. Your next method is going to be to cut into half circles. This is used often as garnishes or for things like fruit pizzas or fruit salads. For this method, you're going to cut the entire fruit in half the long way. Be very careful with this because the fruit is going to be slick, and so it's easy for your knife to slide. Place the fruit cut side down and then cut it into slices. By placing it cut side down, that's going to give you an even surface so that you're less likely to become injured. Notice that I'm curving my fingertips under as I'm slicing. You let your knife ride along your knuckles. This is going to allow you to cut faster, but it also prevents you from accidentally injuring your fingertips as you're cutting. Your last method with kiwi is going to be to cut it into chunks. This is also going to be used for things like fruit salad. You start just like you do with slices by cutting the entire fruit in half and lay the flat side down. Then you're going to cut that half into strips. Turn it 90 degrees and then cut those strips into chunks. Our next fruit is going to be watermelon. This is going to be demonstrated with a personal size watermelon, but the process is going to be the same no matter what the size. Your first step is going to be to cut it in half carefully. Use a sharp chef knife or the largest knife that you have. Set one of the halves to the side. Only keep what you are currently cutting on the board. This is going to prevent you from being injured by your knife sliding into something as you're cutting. Cut the half of the watermelon into half, and then cut that quarter into half, leaving you with 1/8 of your watermelon. Notice that I'm trying to keep my hands out of the way of the blade and taking my time with this process. Better to be safe than sorry. Then, using a paring knife, which is a smaller knife, cut from both ends and cut the fruit away from the rind. It's much easier to use a paring knife in these cases because it's able to get into the smaller spaces. Once you've removed the watermelon from the rind, it's very easy to cut those into any size pieces you'd like by cutting those into strips and then into chunks. This process becomes just like cutting any other type of fruit once you've removed it from the rind. And as usual, use a bench scraper to remove it into a bowl, not a knife. Using a knife is going to put you at risk of cutting the side of your hand. The next type of melon we're going to be cutting is a cantaloupe. You can use this same method for things like honeydew as well. Just like a watermelon, you're going to cut it in half carefully with a large sharp knife. Unlike a watermelon, then you need to scoop the seeds out of the middle with a spoon. You would need to do this with a honeydew as well. A spoon works very well for scraping out all of the seeds from the middle. Then your process is going to look very similar to a watermelon. You're going to cut your half in half and then cut that into eighths. And don't forget to keep your cutting board clean. Using your paring knife once again, cut from both ends and remove the fruit from the rind. Then you're going to cut into any size pieces you would like to by cutting those strips into chunks. And use your bench scraper to remove into your bowl. The last fruit we're going to cover in this video is avocado. And yes, avocado is a fruit. The pit in the center determines that it's a fruit. The first step is to very carefully run your knife around the avocado. It's going to hit the pit in the center. It is super easy to cut your hand in this method. I've done it multiple times, so be very, very careful with this step. After that, you're going to strike the pit with the blade of the knife, being careful to avoid your hand. Then you're going to carefully remove the pit from the blade with a towel, being careful to avoid the blade with your hands once again. This whole process, it's very easy to get injured, so be very, very careful and take your time. Grab a serving spoon and slide that spoon between the peel and the fruit to separate it from the skin. It should come out very easily. This should be very easy if the fruit is ripe. You'll know the fruit is ripe if it gives pretty easily when pressed. Then you're going to slice or mash your avocado for your desired recipe. Avocado goes brown very, very quickly, so store it with plastic wrap pressed directly on top of it to prevent it from browning. Any oxygen it gets exposed to is going to cause it to turn brown very quickly. So a little lime or lemon juice will help with that process as well. Thank you so much for watching this video, and join us next time on Mixing with Mercs. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.